from ABC News 4, South Carolina, I believe, but they say, if anything happens, it's not suicide. Boeing whistleblower's prediction before death.
I know that he did not commit suicide. There's no way.
First tonight, our investigative reporter Ann Emerson has new information in the death of Boeing whistleblower John Barnett.
Now, this is a pretty crazy story, right? So the most notable, most famous suicide in arguably the history of the world was, of course, Jeffrey Epstein. But right behind that, I mean, when you're talking about Boeing, when you're talking about airplanes flying people all over the world, and I'm no aviation expert, but I'm pretty sure it's just Boeing and maybe one or two other companies, manufacturers that supply aircrafts for all of the airlines. And we have seen in recent weeks, quite obviously, several stories, a handful of stories of malfunctions and weird happenings with planes. Now, maybe that was happening the entire time and it didn't make the news, which is pretty bad. Maybe it's brand new for some other reason, which is also pretty bad. And for this guy to allegedly tell some people that he knew that they were going to try to, tell his friends and family not to believe the stories that they may hear about him. So it almost seems like he knew something before what the rest of the American public knew, which I guess is sort of the point of a whistleblower.
Family friend of Barnett says he predicted he might wind up dead, that a story could surface that he killed himself. But he told her, don't believe it. And
Tessa, Barnett's family friend Jennifer said they had talked about this exact scenario playing out, but his words seemed like a premonition. He told her, don't ever believe it.
This is actually really crazy, and I'm surprised that a mainstream media, ABC, for that matter, would even touch a story like this.
I knew John because his mom and my mom are best friends. And so over the years, get-togethers, birthdays, celebrations, and, whatnot, we've all got together and talked, and, that's how we really know each other.
And when Jennifer needed help one day, Barnett came by to see her. They talked about his upcoming depositions in Charleston. Jennifer knew he filed an extremely damaging complaint against Boeing. He says the aerospace giant retaliated against him when he blew the whistle on unsafe practices. For more than 30 years, Barnett was a quality manager. He'd recently retired and moved back to look after his mom in Louisiana.
He wasn't concerned about safety because I asked him, I said, aren't you scared? And he said, and his voice and the way he would talk, no, I ain't scared.
I mean, sometimes the truth really is stranger than fiction. It feels like if he was working at the company for 30 years and recently started to realize things were going downhill, blew the whistle and told his friends that they're going to try to take me out and make it look like I did it myself. I mean, it sounds crazy, but is anything really off the table at this point?
Scared. He said, but if anything happens to me, it's not suicide. I know that he did not commit suicide. There's no way. He loved life too much. He loved his family too much.
And just a little bit of devil's advocate here. I don't know this guy's story, but almost every time somebody goes or somebody, quote unquote, commits suicide, there's always going to be, I can't think of one case, I'm sure it's out there, but it's quite frequent for somebody who knew that person to say, no, there's no way they would have committed suicide. Now, I don't know if he did or if he didn't, but just a little bit of devil's advocate here. Somebody's going to come out and say that every single time. But this is a pretty high profile case. So who knows, bro? Who knows? I mean, just thinking about it in real time right now, it is probably more likely that somebody took him out and tried to make it look like a suicide to save the Boeing Corporation. It's just
his brother's too much to put them through what they're going through right now.
And he basically told you not to believe it.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Not true. He's got too much to do, likes breathing. And he did. He had a lot.
And he was he was probably pretty well off. Like if he was high up in the Boeing company, he probably had plenty of money. But of course, that doesn't buy happiness. But he probably had enough going for him, and was probably a stand up enough guy to take on the Boeing Corporation, and they had the last say.
Plans of things that he wanted to do.
What do you think happened?
I think somebody got in there and made, money can buy anything nowadays, it seems like. And there's a lot of evil in this world. I think somebody didn't like what he had to say and wanted to shut him up, and didn't want it to come back on anyone. So that's why they made it look like a suicide.
Yeah, and I would imagine that the Boeing Corporation is probably in cahoots with the American federal government. They hold the same amount of power, right, over everybody. Everybody at one point or another has to get on an airplane, and that airplane was likely constructed by Boeing or one of a few other companies. So it's pretty powerful stuff.
The last time she saw Barnett, it was at her father's funeral in late February. He was one of the pallbearers. Sometimes family and friends referred to him by his middle name, Mitch.
I think everybody is in disbelief and can't believe it. And I told everybody that I don't care what they say, I know that Mitch didn't do that.
And just because Mitch Barnett is dead doesn't mean this case won't move forward. His attorneys say they're still prepared to go to trial in June.
Well, that's good. It looks like somebody's going to continue to try to stick it to Boeing. But it is pretty crazy that we see a handful of stories in early 2024 about wheels falling off planes and hydraulic leaks and planes colliding on the tarmac in Miami, all sorts of stuff. And I don't know the timeline specifically, but guy at Boeing blows a whistle, then guy who blew the whistle on Boeing comes up missing. It's claimed as suicide, and then somebody comes out and says he would never do that. All pretty strange.